The red line was crossed. A simple, two-word comment about Camilla became the final bullet. King Charles' incandescent fury and the decisive action that severed the tie. The ultimate act of disrespect. Prince Harry is now largely estranged from the royal family, and there was one comment he made that especially angered his father, King Charles, leading to decisive action. The seismic shift in the royal landscape, the definitive estrangement of the Duke of Sussex, can be traced back to a specific moment of profound personal betrayal, one that touched upon the most sensitive core of King Charles' life, his wife, Queen Camilla. The ultimate act of disrespect saw Prince Harry being booted out of Frogmore Cottage by the king, who was particularly angered by a two-word comment Harry reportedly made about Queen Camilla. The removal of the last remaining UK foothold for Harry and Meghan was more than an administrative move. It was a potent, agonizing symbol of a father rejecting his son's defiance. This calculated action marked the point of no return, solidifying the emotional chasm that had been widening for years. Memo: The bombshell and the red line, an unforgivable attack. The Duke of Sussex received his marching orders in January 2023, just days after the publication of his explosive memoir Spare. The timing was a cold, calculated response, illustrating the depth of the king's anger and his immediate need to assert his authority and protect his spouse. The book's contents became the unforgivable catalyst, a public declaration of war on the woman Charles had fought so long to legitimize. The book made a number of bombshell claims, including alleging a physical fight between Harry and Prince William, details of Harry's drug use, and the ongoing feud between Meghan and Princess Kate. These revelations, though damaging, were largely expected or focused on past grievances. Yet, the most significant, and ultimately the most destructive, target was Camilla. The British press meticulously tracked the frequency of her mention, confirming her central, adversarial role in Harry's narrative. However, Harry's biggest target appeared to be Queen Camilla. The intensity of the focus on her role, past and present, was unmistakable and relentless. There were more than 60 mentions of Camilla in the book, and Harry made no attempt to hide his contempt for the other woman. This sheer volume of mention underscored the psychological weight she carried in Harry's life and narrative. It wasn't just criticism, it was an extended, public dissection of her character and motives, laying bare the deep-seated resentment he harbored for her influence on his father. Fire the father's fury, a sacrifice unforgiven. Sources suggested that King Charles was incandescent over Harry's attacks on his wife, including Harry's description of her as a wicked stepmother. For Charles, this attack was a blow delivered on two deeply personal fronts. Firstly, the term wicked stepmother invoked the ghost of Princess Diana and the decades of negative press Camilla had endured, a past the king had desperately tried to bury, an association that had plagued their relationship since the 1990s. Secondly, after years of finally achieving a peaceful, stable, and happy marriage with Camilla, the public assault by his own son felt like a cruel sabotage of his personal life and his monarchy's stability. The psychological toll on the 74-year-old monarch was reportedly immense. Palace insiders claimed that Charles moved quickly after receiving a briefing from advisors about the revelations in Spare, and decided to evict Harry and Meghan. It was the last straw, one source said. The psychological pressure point had been found and pressed. Harry, a former soldier known for his strategic thinking, seemed to misjudge the emotional impact this particular attack would have on his father. Harry was well aware of how Camilla would be a red line for his father, and he crossed it with flagrant disregard anyway. This suggests a conscious choice by Harry to prioritize his truth and emotional pain over the sanctity of his relationship with his father and the stability of the crown. The inherent defiance in this act is what made it unforgivable. The source added that King Charles felt it crossed a line and was the ultimate act of disrespect. This phrase encapsulates the magnitude of the king's wounded pride and anger. Disrespecting the future queen was not just a family squabble, it was an act of insubordination against the institution Carlos III was sworn to protect, a direct challenge to his authority as both a sovereign and a husband. Face mask a PR battle and the injection metaphor. Harry's contempt stemmed from a deep-seated belief that he and William were sacrificial lambs on Camilla's path to rehabilitation. Harry himself acknowledged in his book that he and his brother William had begged their father not to marry Camilla, fearing she would be a wicked stepmother. This shared childhood fear bound the brothers in their apprehension about the future queen. I had complex feelings about gaining a step-parent who, I believed, had recently sacrificed me on her personal PR altar, Harry wrote. This powerful metaphor of the PR altar positions Camilla as a ruthless strategist who prioritized her image, and therefore her power, over the emotional well-being of the young princes. This feeling of being used or betrayed appears to be the root of Harry's rage, a profound sense of historical injustice. He added, in a funny way, I even wanted Camilla to be happy. Maybe she'd be less dangerous if she was happy? This quote reveals a complex psychological state, a mixture of passive-aggressive resentment and genuine, albeit conditional, longing for peace. He viewed her happiness not as a source of joy for his father, but as a mechanism to minimize her perceived threat level, suggesting a deep-seated anxiety about her ambition. The trauma of the first meeting was etched into Harry's memory, defining the relationship from the outset. Harry also wrote unfavorably about his first meeting with Camilla in his biography. Willie went first. Head bumped into the other woman once at the palace, but now he was formally summoned from Eton for a high-stakes private meeting. He described his own introduction to Camilla as getting an injection. My turn came next. I told myself, no big deal. Just like getting an injection. Close your eyes, over before you know it. The analogy to an injection, something necessary, slightly painful, and requiring emotional bracing, speaks volumes about the artificiality and discomfort he felt in the interaction. It was a chore to be endured, a moment of duty to be completed, rather than a genuine attempt to build a bond. Ice Camilla's stoic defense, least said, soonest mended. In contrast to Harry's emotional outpourings, Camilla's circle highlighted her stoic resilience, a trait honed by decades of public hostility. Lady Lansdowne, 68, who is godmother to Camilla's daughter Laura Lopez, later said that the Queen was understandably upset by Harry's comments. Of course it bothers her, of course it hurts. But she doesn't let it get to her, Lady Lansdowne said, quoting Camilla's philosophy. Don't make a thing of it and it will settle down, least said, soonest mended. This philosophy of least said, soonest mended starkly contrasts with Harry's belief in radical transparency. While Harry sought to heal by exposing the wound, Camilla sought to neutralize the attack through dignified silence, an approach that ultimately solidified her position within the family and the public eye, often perceived as a sign of regal composure. Harry also claimed that while Camilla had made an effort with William, she appeared bored when they met, calling it pure formality because he wasn't the heir or a major obstacle to the union. This perception, whether accurate or not, fueled Harry's sense of being marginalized and overlooked, reinforcing his belief that Camilla's actions were purely transactional and driven by ambition. Harry's feeling of erasure was further intensified by an alleged domestic act. Harry also alleged that Camilla converted his bedroom into her own personal dressing room as soon as he moved out of Clarence's house when he was 28. This seemingly trivial detail takes on heavy symbolic weight, representing for Harry the wholesale erasure of his place within the family's inner sanctum. It's an intimate act of territorial assertion, reinforcing the idea of Camilla replacing him entirely and literally taking over his space. Revolving light: the dangerous villain, power, hierarchy, and eviction. The final, and most damaging, public assessment of Camilla came during his television promotional tour. During an appearance on 60 Minutes, Harry described Camilla as dangerous because of her media connections. There was open willingness on both sides to trade information, he said, adding that with a family built on hierarchy, and with her on the way to being queen consort, there were going to be people or bodies left in the street. He also described his stepmother as the villain. This analysis casts Camilla not merely as a stepmother, but as a central player in a cutthroat institutional drama, a villain capable of leaving bodies in the street for the sake of power. This portrayal of the monarchy as a Darwinian struggle for survival, particularly aimed at the woman his father loves and elevated to queen, was the tipping point. The eviction from Frogmore Cottage was King Charles' swift, painful response to the man who dared to call his wife the villain and challenge the legitimacy of her ascent. It was a powerful, physical severing of the final thread connecting the estranged son to his royal home. Heartbreak: the unwinding, the psychological impact of Frogmore's loss. The loss of Frogmore Cottage was not just a housing issue, it was the psychological erasure of Harry and Meghan's past royal life. The cottage, a gift from Queen Elizabeth II, symbolized a fragile bridge between their new life and the old world they had left. Revoking access to the property was tantamount to the ultimate exclusion from the family circle. It was the last, desperate hope of a base in the UK, a symbol of potential reconciliation that the king decisively revoked. This final act of parental rejection, fueled by a deep-seated need to protect his wife's dignity and his own hard-won happiness, underscores the profound tragedy of the royal rift. Harry chose to tell his truth about Camilla. King Charles chose to defend his queen with the ultimate gesture of exclusion. The message was clear: no attack on the queen will be tolerated, and the cost of defiance is banishment. The emotional damage inflicted by the loss of this last familial sanctuary is immeasurable, leaving the Duke and Duchess of Sussex truly isolated from their former